Stop me if this sounds familiar. You just made what felt like a completely rational decision, only to realize later that you were unconsciously following what everyone else was doing. Maybe you bought into a stock bubble, chose a career path because it looked impressive on social media, or picked a restaurant because the line was longest. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You're not as independent as you think you are, and that's costing you more than you realize. Right now, your brain is being influenced by invisible forces that have been shaping human behavior for thousands of years. The same mental wiring that kept our ancestors alive is now being exploited by algorithms and social pressures in ways that are quietly sabotaging your financial decisions, career choices, and personal happiness. But here's what the crowd doesn't want you to know. The people who achieve real success have learned to recognize these traps and use them to their advantage. I'm about to reveal the 3 most dangerous mental traps that cost people millions in missed opportunities. Traps that feel completely logical when you're in them. Plus, I'll show you the exact strategies that philosophers like Nietzsche developed to build mental independence, and a modern framework that'll help you make better decisions starting today. Hit that like button if you're ready to break free from the herd mentality, and subscribe with notifications on, because what I'm about to share challenges everything you've been taught about following conventional wisdom. Let's get started. Picture this. You're walking through a crowded mall when suddenly everyone starts looking up at the ceiling. What's your first instinct? You look up too, right? That split-second reaction isn't weakness. It's your ancient survival system kicking in. For thousands of years, following the crowd meant staying alive. When the tribe ran, you ran. When they gathered around something, it was probably important. Your brain's wired with this herd mentality because, frankly, it kept your ancestors from becoming saber-toothed tiger snacks. Here's where it gets interesting, though. That same neural pathway that once saved lives now gets triggered by everything from stock market crashes to viral TikTok trends. Your amygdala, that little alarm bell in your brain, can't tell the difference between a genuine threat and someone else's opinion about crypto investments. It's like having a smoke detector that goes off every time you toast bread. The sensitivity that once served you is now working against you in ways you probably don't even realize. Think about the last time you were in a restaurant and couldn't decide what to order. What did you do? You probably scanned the room to see what others were eating, or asked the server what was popular. That's crowd psychology in action, harmless in this case, but the exact same mental process that makes you second-guess your investment choices when the market's volatile. Your brain's constantly asking, "What's everyone else doing?" because it assumes they know something you don't. The real kicker is that this social influence happens so fast, you barely notice it. Researchers have found that within 200 milliseconds, faster than you can blink, your brain starts adjusting your preferences based on what others around you are doing. It's not conscious decision-making, it's pure instinct. But here's what your primitive brain doesn't understand. The modern world isn't a life-or-death survival game anymore. And that changes everything about how you should be processing these mental traps. Now, let's talk about how today's world has turned your natural tendency to follow the crowd into a full-blown addiction. Social media didn't just give you a platform, it gave you a microscope into everyone else's choices, opinions, and behaviors, 24/7. Every scroll through Instagram is like walking into that crowded mall, except now you're seeing thousands of people all looking up at the ceiling simultaneously. Your brain's getting overwhelmed with social pressure it was never designed to handle. Here's the thing that'll blow your mind. The average person checks their phone 96 times a day. Each time, they're unconsciously asking, "What's the crowd doing now?" Facebook's like button isn't just social validation. It's a direct injection of mass behavior into your decision-making process. When you see that 847 people liked a political post, your brain doesn't think, "These are just random opinions." It thinks, "This must be true because everyone believes it." That's groupthink on steroids, and it's reshaping how you form opinions about everything from politics to what coffee you drink. The media amplifies this even further by constantly showing you what's trending, what's popular, or what everyone's talking about. They've figured out that human beings are hardwired to pay attention to crowd behavior, so they feed you a steady diet of it. Studies show that people are 60% more likely to adopt an opinion after seeing it labeled as popular or trending, even when they initially disagreed with it. Breaking news isn't just information anymore, it's social proof that you should care about something because millions of others do. Your critical thinking gets hijacked by this constant stream of "everyone else is doing it" messaging. But here's where it gets really dangerous. Algorithms have learned to exploit your herd mentality for profit. Every recommendation, every people who bought this also bought, everyone your friends like this. It's all designed to trigger your conformity instincts. You think you're making independent choices, but you're actually following digital breadcrumbs laid out by systems that know exactly which psychological buttons to push. And the deeper you go down this rabbit hole, the more you start to lose touch with your own authentic preferences and values. Let me tell you about the 3 mental traps that cost people the most money, time, and happiness, and you've probably fallen into at least one of them this week. The first trap is what I call investment lemming syndrome. When markets are boiling hot and everyone's making money, your brain screams, "Get in before it's too late." When they crash and everyone's selling in panic, that same brain yells, "Cut your losses." You end up buying high and selling low, following the herd straight off a financial cliff. Warren Buffett made his fortune doing the exact opposite of what crowds do, but most people can't resist the psychological pull of mass behavior. The second trap is career comparison paralysis. You see everyone in your network posting about their dream jobs, promotions, or side hustles on LinkedIn, and suddenly, your perfectly good career feels like garbage. Research from Harvard Business School found that 78% of career changes are triggered by social comparison rather than genuine dissatisfaction. You start making decisions based on what looks impressive to others rather than what actually aligns with your values and goals. I've seen brilliant people abandon careers they loved just because their friends were making more money in tech or real estate. They traded personal fulfillment for social approval and ended up miserable. The third and most insidious trap is opinion adoption disorder. This is when you unconsciously absorb the beliefs and viewpoints of whatever group you want to belong to, without ever questioning whether they actually make sense to you. Your political views, lifestyle choices, even your taste in music, how much of it is genuinely yours versus what you've absorbed from your social environment? Most people can't even tell the difference anymore because they've been unconsciously conforming for so long. What makes these traps so devastating is that they feel completely natural and logical when you're in them. Your brain provides perfectly reasonable explanations for why following the crowd was the smart choice. But step back and look at the pattern, and you'll see how social influence has been quietly steering your life in directions you never consciously chose to go. The question is, how do you break free from these invisible chains? Friedrich Nietzsche saw this coming over a century ago. He called it herd morality, the tendency for people to adopt the values and behaviors of their group without question. Nietzsche wasn't being elitist. He was pointing out a fundamental truth. When you let the crowd do your thinking for you, you're not really living your own life. He argued that real strength comes from developing your own moral compass, even when it means standing alone. The individual has always had to struggle not to be overwhelmed by the tribe, he wrote, and brother, was he right? Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, took a different but equally powerful approach. He taught that your thoughts and decisions should come from within, based on reason and virtue, not external pressure. Here's how to apply this practically. Before making any important decision, ask yourself Aurelius's key question: is this choice aligned with my values? Or am I just following what appears popular? He also practiced what he called morning reflection. Spend 5 minutes each morning identifying one area where you might be unconsciously conforming, then consciously choose your own path for that day. Then there's Arthur Schopenhauer, who nailed the psychology behind why we follow crowds. He observed that most people are like sheep. comfortable in the safety of the flock, never questioning where they're being led. But he also noted something crucial. The very fact that you can observe this tendency in yourself means you have the power to transcend it. Schopenhauer's practical advice was simple. Whenever you catch yourself saying, "everyone thinks," or "everyone's doing," stop and replace it with, "I think," or "I choose." This small linguistic shift rewires your brain for independent thinking. What's fascinating is that all these philosophers, separated by centuries and cultures, arrived at the same conclusion. Thinking for yourself isn't just intellectually superior, it's essential for a meaningful life. They understood that conformity might feel safe and comfortable, but it's a prison that keeps you from discovering who you really are. Take Jeff Bezos, who ignored 94% of experts who said online retail would fail, or Howard Schultz, who built Starbucks despite being told Americans would never pay premium prices for coffee. The question is, are you ready to join the ranks of history's greatest contrarian thinkers? All right, let's get practical. The first strategy for developing independent thinking is what I call the 48-hour rule. Whenever you feel the urge to make a decision based on what everyone else is doing, whether it's an investment, a career move, or even something as simple as choosing a restaurant, force yourself to wait 48 hours before acting. During that cooling-off period, ask yourself, if no one else knew about this decision, what would I choose? You'll be amazed how different your answer becomes when you remove the social pressure element. The second strategy is to actively seek out contrarian viewpoints. Make it a habit to find smart people who disagree with popular opinions and really listen to their reasoning. This doesn't mean becoming a rebel for the sake of it. It means developing the mental muscle to consider multiple perspectives before forming your own judgment. Start following thinkers, podcasters, or writers who challenge conventional wisdom in your areas of interest. Your goal isn't to adopt their views, but to strengthen your critical thinking by wrestling with different ideas. Third, create what I call decision isolation chambers. These are specific times and places where you disconnect from social media, news, and other people's opinions to think through important choices on your own. It might be a daily walk without your phone, a weekly session in a quiet coffee shop, or even just 20 minutes before bed where you reflect on your day. The key is creating space between you and the crowd's influence so your authentic preferences can emerge. Finally, start tracking your decisions and their outcomes. Keep a simple journal where you note whether you made a choice based on your own reasoning or social influence. Then follow up on how it worked out. A Stanford study tracking decision-making patterns over 5 years found that people who consciously resisted social pressure made profitable decisions 73% more often than those who followed crowd behavior. You'll start to see patterns, and I guarantee you'll discover that your best decisions usually came from trusting your own judgment rather than following the crowd. But building this mental fortress is just the beginning. The real art lies in knowing when to use it. Here's the truth that most people miss. Sometimes following the crowd is actually the smart move. The key is learning to distinguish between when you're being a mindless sheep and when you're making an intelligent decision to go with the flow. If you're driving in an unfamiliar city and everyone else is taking a particular exit to avoid traffic, that's useful information. If you're investing your life savings because everyone else is buying GameStop stock, that's herd mentality in action. The secret lies in understanding the difference between information and influence. When the crowd provides you with data that helps you make a better decision, that's golden. When the crowd's behavior triggers an emotional response that bypasses your rational thinking, that's dangerous. Smart contrarians aren't rebels. They're selective. They know how to extract valuable signals from crowd behavior while filtering out the noise that leads to poor decision-making. Think about it this way. Every successful person you admire has mastered this balance. They're not hermits who ignore everyone else, and they're not followers who never think for themselves. Warren Buffett studies market sentiment but doesn't let it drive his investment decisions. He famously bought Coca-Cola when everyone said it was old economy, and it became one of his best investments. Reed Hastings launched Netflix's streaming service when 99% of the industry said people would never abandon physical DVDs. Sarah Blakely created Spanx by ignoring fashion experts who told her women didn't want shapewear. Great leaders gather input from their teams, but take responsibility for final choices that often go against popular opinion. The ultimate goal isn't to never be influenced by others. That's impossible and probably not even desirable. The goal is to become conscious of when and how you're being influenced, so you can choose your response rather than just react. When you master this balance, you're not fighting against human nature. You're leveraging it. You're using both the wisdom of crowds and the power of independent thinking to create something better than either one alone could achieve. So here's the moment of truth. You now know exactly how your mind gets hijacked by crowd psychology. You understand the 3 most dangerous traps that keep people stuck in mediocrity. And you have the philosophical wisdom and practical tools to build genuine mental independence. But knowing isn't enough, and this is where most people fail. They consume the information, feel enlightened for about 5 minutes, then go right back to unconsciously following the herd, because real change requires conscious effort. Let me ask you something that might make you uncomfortable. What decision are you putting off right now because you're worried about what others might think? What dream are you not pursuing because it doesn't fit the conventional path everyone else is taking? What investment, career move, or life choice are you second-guessing because it goes against popular opinion? That hesitation you're feeling, that's your herd mentality talking, and it's keeping you from the life you actually want to live. Here's your challenge. Pick one area where you've been following the crowd without question. Your career, your finances, your relationships, even your daily routines, and apply the 48-hour rule this week. Step back, disconnect from the social pressure, and ask yourself what you would choose if nobody else's opinion mattered. Then have the courage to act on that authentic choice, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. That discomfort? That's the feeling of growth, of breaking free from mental chains you didn't even know you were wearing. If this video opened your eyes to how much your decisions are being influenced by others, hit that like button right now. Not because everyone else is doing it, but because you genuinely found value in learning to think independently. Subscribe and ring that notification bell, because I'm building a community of people who refuse to let the crowd do their thinking for them. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, especially if they've been stuck in decision paralysis or following paths that don't truly fit them. And drop a comment telling me about a time when you went against the crowd and it paid off. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to take that leap. Remember, in a world full of followers, independent thinkers don't just survive, they thrive.